That was a noble thing you did back then.
It's been 20 years since Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone was released in theaters, so it's no surprise that not all the special effects still hold up. This magical world needed a lot of CGI, too, for everything from magically disappearing bricks at the entrance to Diagon Alley, to Floo powder, thestrals, magical creatures, and the spells themselves. By the final films in the series. Released 10 years ago, the CGI had definitely improved, so much of the worst is from the early movies, but that's not to say that the Deathly Hallows was perfect. And of course, in time, more effects that were stunning at the time of release will become badly aged and obvious in comparison to newer, better technology.
Down this instant!
In the Sorcerer's Stone, Neville falls off his broomstick in flying lessons, and is taken to the hospital wing, allowing for Harry and Draco to face off, and Harry to be discovered for the Quidditch team. Neville's fall is a relatively small part of the scene, especially compared to Harry and Draco flying, but it's clear that it wasn't paid the same attention as the rest of the shot either. The Neville that falls is entirely CGI, and it looks it. From the shape of the body to the definition and shading, it's clearly not a real person falling. The moment that Harry, Ron, and Hermione first become real friends, and take on a mountain troll in the girls' bathroom, is well known for including some terrible CGI. Unsurprisingly, it's the troll itself that is the problem, because it looks evidently fake, cartoonish, and obviously computer-generated. When Harry rides the troll to try and save Hermione, he also looks more like a video game character than a human, and the difference in the wand scene going up the troll's nose, and the one coming out, is clear.
The bludgers are up, followed by the golden snitch. Remember, the snitch is worth 150 points. The seeker who catches the snitch.
Quidditch appears in 4 of the films, and thankfully, the quality of the matches improves as time goes on. The Quidditch World Cup is a particularly magical scene, and the final Quidditch match of the franchise still holds up. However, the early Quidditch scenes were very sloppy, especially the wider shots of the pitch. These looked more like video game locations than a real-life sports field, without the necessary detail and shading. In closer shots, the players looked obviously placed over top of a background, rather than appearing to really be existing in it.
This is a ministry matter.
Lower your weapons.
The centaurs that live in the Forbidden Forest have 2 main appearances in the films. First, when Harry meets Firenze in the forest while searching for the injured unicorn, and later, when they carry off Professor Umbridge. The second group of centaurs is significantly improved on the first, but all of them appear overly smooth and obviously fake. Eagle-eyed fans will spot that in the scene with Firenze, the centaur doesn't appear to breathe, either, even immediately after having chased off Voldemort.
Bravery. Your parents had it too. Tell me, Harry, would you like to see?
The last of the worst CGI from the first film, the big reveal that Quirrell is possessed by Voldemort, who appears on the back of his head, is largely ruined by the terrible effects. Harry finally meets Quirrell after working through various tests with his friends, and in these, the effects are fairly good, with the game of Wizard's Chess a standout. However, when he meets Quirrell and sees what is under that turban, it's a distorted, plastic-looking version of Voldemort's face. The way that it moves on the head is also strange and unbelievable.
The pixies can be devilishly tricky little blighters. Let's see what you make of them. No!
The Harry Potter franchise includes multiple magical creatures, and while some of them, like Buckbeak and the dragons, are beautifully rendered with incredible detail and realism, the Cornish pixies that Lockhart lets loose in class most definitely are not. They move awkwardly, have the same cartoonish look as many of the worst CGI creatures, and cast no shadows. The moment where they lift Neville off the ground stands out as particularly egregious.
If you choose to stay where you are, Uncle. But if you ever wanted a different home...
Come and live.
In The Prisoner of Azkaban, Professor Lupin takes over Defense Against the Dark Arts, and one of the big reveals at the end of the film is that he is actually a werewolf, and the transformation takes place on screen as Harry and his friends watch in horror. Unfortunately, the transformation didn't hold up. While the scene is actually a combination of CGI and David Thewlis in makeup, certain moments in the transformation look awkward and plastic, clearly animated. Given that the wolf Remus looks fantastically threatening in the shadows, or from a distance, it may have been a better choice to show this transformation off-screen, or simply in less detail.
Harry, look at you! You look so much like your father, like James. We were the best of friends.
The second big reveal and transformation moment in The Prisoner of Azkaban is in the same scene. As Lupin is transforming into a werewolf, Peter Pettigrew is transforming into his animagus, a rat. Once again, it may have been better to simply show the human Pettigrew, cut away, and then show the rat, for the sake of believability. Instead, the transformation is done on screen, using CGI, and it looks clunky, with an obvious moment where the rat appears, rather than a smooth and believable transition.
I couldn't just leave him because he's...
By the time of Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, most of the CGI has improved hugely from the first film, but there are exceptions. As mentioned, the centaurs are not particularly believable or well done, but the worst offender of the film is Grop, Hagrid's giant half-brother. Much like the ogre in the first movie, Grop is obviously created with CGI, and as he is often in scenes with real actors, such as when he holds Hermione, the contrast is stark. Rather than being one particular scene, there are multiple scenes where longer shots, especially of Hogwarts, are created entirely with CGI, and look it. Obviously, this is because there isn't a real Hogwarts. Alnwick Castle was used for some of the exterior shots of castle walls and grounds, but this wouldn't work for the multiple turrets and dramatic backdrop of Hogwarts, so these were usually computer-generated. Especially in the earlier films, the contrast between these and closer shots of the castle walls was obvious.